Hi everyone, hope you had a good weekend. Just wanted to follow up on a bit of our stuff from last week and talk about the week to come and go over a few of the quiz questions that were most recently missed. Sorry, most frequently missed. So last week we were just kind of starting to get the overall picture of strategy, strategic planning, strategic management, kind of that shift from planning to strategic management overall, talking a little bit about that. Hopefully you find the Flipgrid to be a good format. I've found that sometimes students are uncomfortable with it at the onset, but then once we get rolling, they tend to like it much more. So hopefully you'll find it to be a useful tool to discuss topics. It tends to be. I would encourage you not to read, not to kind of read a script, but just maybe have points on paper that you're discussing, and that'll help us to have a kind of a more robust discussion overall. So this week we're going to be talking about the environment. So we're going to talk about external environmental analysis and the importance of that in overall strategic management, strategic planning. So talking about not just looking at your competition, but also the entire industry or the entire environment overall, the regulatory environment, the economy of the country as a whole, et cetera, all of the different types of things that play into looking at the external environment and how that impacts your organization. So we'll talk a bit about that. Also this week, we are going to be making, and it's down here, it's the final topic selection. You're actually going to be writing a strategic business plan for for an organization. It could be maybe somewhere that you work. It could be somewhere that you are a patient and you're familiar with it. It can be just a completely fake organization if you want, but it needs to be healthcare related. It doesn't need to be direct care. It could be the payer sector. It could be something in the wellness sector, but it does need to be healthcare related. And this would be the topic for your final project at the end for the strategic business plan. So I actually have an example here in the classroom. This is this is an actual plan that is used as an example for Veterans Affairs employees to use. But so it's probably a little more in depth than what yours will be, but it is a good example for us to take a look at overall. So you will be developing a strategic plan, a business plan. It can be for a unit. Maybe you want to open a new unit. Maybe you want to open a new service. Maybe perhaps you are interested in opening a men's health service or a women's health service, or some type of well care element, maybe a new workplace wellness program. That's what this one happens to be. Or perhaps something new and exciting, maybe holistic types of healthcare, acupuncture, and those types of services that are becoming more and more prevalent. And there is a kind of a clamor for those types of things. But it can be anything. It can simply be you're adding a new, maybe you're adding PET CT to your radiology lineup. It can be anything. So you're going to kind of look at these examples of what you will be developing and think about what you want to choose as a topic. If you have questions, if you want to run something by me before you submit it, please feel free. But otherwise, I'll give you feedback based on what you submit in the classroom this week. We also have our discussion for the week, specifically about the continued changes in the healthcare environment and why environmental analysis would be important. And then we're also going to be developing a stakeholder map. So there's an example of a stakeholder map in your textbook, Exhibit 2-8. So you're going to be creating kind of the same thing for a healthcare organization that you're familiar with. It can be, again, it can be somewhere that you work. It can be somewhere that you're a patient. It can just be somewhere that you choose online where you can see kind of who the stakeholders are for them, as by taking a look at the example that we have. It'll give you an idea on how to develop that. So that'll be your written assignment for this week in conjunction with the topic selection. Then we also have our quiz for this week and the ed puzzle. And most weeks that's what we'll have: a written assignment, typically a single written assignment. We kind of have two this week. I apologize for that. A discussion, the quiz, and the ed puzzle each week as well. So I think that's all I have there. Let's flip over to the quiz question review. So the first one, an organization may create a new unintended strategy by, and our correct answer is implementing the strategy created by its process. So sometimes when you are a healthcare organization, or any organization for that matter, you kind of go through the process of developing strategy, whatever it is. Maybe you're opening a new unit, or taking a new hiring strategy, or whatever it happens to be, and you think you've worked through all of the all of the possibilities when you're going through that planning process, but once you go live with it and you're actually implementing the strategy that you've developed, it may sometimes create something new. So it could be good, it could be not good, and maybe you have to make a shift in your strategy overall, but it can create a new strategy. So that process is quite common that would happen, and sometimes it's a positive. Maybe a new strategy was created that was unintended, but it is positive and it's working in the same direction as the ultimate goals of the organization. Sometimes when we implement a strategy, that strategy that we've created is creates something negative, something that we didn't plan, and we do need to make a shift to change that. So, but overall, they can create new strategy in an unintended way by simply doing what they had set out to do. And that just happens, unfortunately. Next one, strategies are long range in nature, and thus the time span is the principal focus of strategic planning. The answer to this is false. Not all strategies are long range in nature. Some of them could be shorter range, and we don't necessarily want to focus on the time span. That's the way things used to be done. It was very, okay, we're going to set out a 5-year strategic plan. We're going to do this, 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 this. And there's been a shift in that it's not as focused on the time and much more focused on the goals of the strategy. So what are we trying to address through our strategy? Maybe growth, maybe expansion into other areas. Maybe it's just to stay on top of issues in the industry. Like, for example, and it's not healthcare related, but higher education is going through a lot of, it's a pretty tumultuous time in higher education. And so colleges and universities all over are really kind of in survival mode. Okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to shift in our organizations to continue our work overall? Sometimes, as if you've been familiar with RMU, I know that you're newer to our program, but familiar with it from before you started, or if you were a former student. At the undergraduate level, we had a fairly sizable layoff last year. We've shifted our priorities in certain areas, focusing on professional programs such as this instead of programs in liberal arts, because there's not as much of a call for those now. So it's not time-based. It's no longer, okay, in the next 5 years, we're hoping to do this. It is, okay, what do we do now to shift our strategy so that we can reach our goals, and not necessarily to see where we're going to be in 5 years. It's much more about goals than it is about time. We always need to have timelines or things can stall, but it's not necessarily as much about time as it used to be. Another true false here, many of the management methods adopted by healthcare organizations originated in the business sector. This question is true, or this statement is true. Very much. Healthcare is a business. Unfortunately, there's many that don't see it that way, don't understand it that way, but it is a business currently, and until we were to move to an entitlement type system. But at this point, it is a business and needs to operate as such. So things like planning and technology and management overall, quality improvement, a lot of these areas we've taken, kind of the best of what the business industry has to offer us, and oftentimes it has to be shifted slightly because of the nature of our business, but we really have a lot to learn, especially from the retail and hospitality industry. Healthcare has a lot to learn from them. Places, when they're doing it well, can really teach us a lot. But just general business sector theories and methods can be very helpful in healthcare as well, as long as we shift that focus from building widgets to dealing with human lives. So it's different in that way, but a lot of the methods are still impactful in healthcare overall. So that is the end of that. And I think that's all I've got for this week. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. If you have questions about the final project, if you make a choice now and as you get to start working on it, you want to shift and go a different direction, that's perfectly fine. You're not 100% locked into what you're choosing this week, but I want you to be able to start thinking about it as you're working through assignments. Like, for example, this week, external environmental analysis, okay, that's going to be part of your strategic plan. So, as you're working through assignments and thinking about it this week, you can think about, okay, well, how would that impact my final project topic? So that's why it's good to make that choice early on so you can continue to think about it for that final plan, which we'll be doing week 7. So we still have a few weeks to get to that. But so that's it. And like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I'll look forward to seeing everyone in the discussions. Thanks.